All right, Bill, Whitney, I think I'll go ahead and kick things off if you're ready.
Yep.
All right, wonderful. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to this Friday noontime session of the Knotel webinar series. My name is Trevor Clark. I run growth, which is sales and marketing globally for Knotel. And I'm very fortunate today to be joined by two of the primary leaders at RXR, which is a major player in the New York market from a commercial real estate standpoint, but also kind of a leader globally as far as what we're seeing from a return to work standpoint. So Whitney, Bill, if I can turn it over to you, I'd love to let you introduce yourselves and give the audience a little bit of your background. So.
Sure. Ladies first?
I would rather you go first, Bill.
Okay. Thank you, Whitney. I'm Bill Elder, Executive Vice President and Managing Director of our city office for RXR Realty, primarily focused in the leasing world. I've been doing kind of commercial real estate for almost 30 years now. Started my career at Shorenstein, and this is my second kind of part of my life with RXR/Rexon. So I was worked with the guys back in the kind of mid 2000, 2004, 2005, until we sold the company in 2007 to SL Green. I couldn't wait to get back and rejoin the company in 2010. And what we're going to talk about today, I'll save for that discussion. But always been a very progressive company. Our leader, Scott Reckler, is a visionary in kind of all things, but particularly real estate and leadership. So it's a pleasure to be affiliated, such a great organization with such great people at a difficult time. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague and partner, Whitney Arcaro.
So I not to make this a moment of making Bill maybe tear up, but Bill was one of the first people I actually indirectly and to some degree directly worked with when I started off in real estate. So being somebody who's like right on the cusp of Gen X and Gen Y, I think my resume reflects those generations, and that there was a little bit of what we'll call millennial job hopping in the beginning between comedy writing and working at Warner Brothers, and finally in like 3 different startups that essentially read more like an obituary because none of them worked out. And that eventually put me into real estate as a broker. And I happened to be the junior person on a team that was working on, at the time, it was the largest leasing transaction in the country, which was the Cigna headquarters location, and Bill was at Shorenstein. So I remember many really great calls and a lot of, back and forth and correspondence pertaining to that as just the junior who had to kind of, amalgamate all the information and evaluate things and tee back the proposals. And it was really great to see the care and the pride and candidly, the transparency and the really amazing customer service that Bill provided, not only to his client, but at the same time to the intermediary, our brokerage teams, which are so essential to those types of transactions, was really amazing. So through that, I ended up coming onto the landlord side. As a broker, I was recruited by Vornado, and they were very clear that they just wanted somebody who didn't necessarily have a traditional marketing background. And Vornado really set up the foundation of my whole real estate life, and just having 8 years there with the management team who was there at the time was just exceptional on every possible level and afforded a lot of exposure. And then that brought me, I sort of was seduced at the very end of my time at Vornado. 220 was coming into its life, and I just loved luxury residential. So I took a chance on working with Michael Schvo that really expanded my entire Rolodex on a lot of levels into, super high-end, ultra luxury hospitality and residential, which was great. And then I was able to actually sort of take advantage of all of the things that I learned commercially from a sense of, integrated strategy and integrated departmental flow and capital impact and asset management. I mean, there's so many layers in both residential and commercial by joining RXR. And it's been 3.5 years, but honestly, one of the best experiences of my life to really have someone like Scott be such a visionary and have him really act on his ideas and put these strategies to life in a meaningful way. And I think clearly his leadership during COVID is a clear sign of the type of leader that he is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's and thank you both for giving everyone the context of who you are and the type of company RXR is, because that's one of the reasons we were excited about bringing you on and letting you tell our community a little bit of how you're approaching these interesting times. But certainly the need for leadership and kind of a progressive attitude, but also a positive attitude about the future of the industry and the city and how it operates in the context of the city and the city's economy getting back to work is important. So we can jump right in. For folks not familiar with the format, this is just a conversation. Think of it as kind of like a video podcast, if you will. I'm just going to ask a bunch of questions and learn, sit back and learn as Bill and Whitney lead the conversation. So to open it up, I mean, I think what is most interesting to us right now is we're watching as an operator, but also a tenant and someone who supports a number of members who occupy space, is that RXR has been across you run 25 million square feet in the city, but also as an employer who have people that report to you on a daily basis, you've also been a leader in getting people back into the office. And I think the figure that we heard is as many as 90% of your team now reports into the office. So it would be interesting to learn from you of how you've supported that return to work effort, both from a situation of physical changes to the space, as well as like how you've ameliorated any concerns your team had, whether it's riding the subway or general transportation, or just childcare and other concerns people are dealing with as we kind of navigate this interesting period.
Well, I'll start. And I don't think in my wildest imagination I would have ever predicted something like this to happen, right? And, on the day that we all kind of, the work from home orders started, I can tell you we went to work in a much different way. We were already working hard. But again, Scott being the visionary that he is, we happen to be working on several projects to really bring meaningful technology into the real estate kind of offerings. And just through partnerships with McKinsey, Microsoft, we were kind of uniquely set up to pivot to something that none of us ever anticipated to deal with the whole COVID, whatever you want to call it, situation. So, I think Whitney and I are, would both agree, probably never worked, and we both work really hard, never worked harder for such a lengthy period of time as we did. And as we started to see closures around the world, the executive committee came together. We had a task force established probably beginning of February, right, Whitney, to start talking about, hey, let's make sure that we've got the right technology internally so that if we do end up having to work from home for periods of time, that we've got the right ways to communicate with each other and others outside of the organization. And so that was kind of the first building block to, when we went into the work from home category, we were able to really be effective as a team working from home. So, we started to go through things like, okay, we need to order PPE immediately. Let's get as much as we can. Our head of operations at the time, now our chief operating officer, a guy named Frank Pusinelli, had the vision and foresight to start ordering plywood, just because we didn't know, why we might need to board things up. But, storms, et cetera, turned out to be something different. But, we're uniquely equipped for that. In addition to the PPE. So we got hand sanitizer, all the PPE. I think we got 5 million sets of gloves and 1.5 million, 2 million masks that we secured at that period of time, plus a pretty good supply of the hand sanitizer. So we're good to go with that, put it in storage. And then started to go about, okay, how are we going to bring our buildings, how are we going to keep them open? And how, because there was the essential workforce that had to go into the offices, how are we going to keep them open? How are we going to make them safe? And that's where the hard stuff started to be run through, calculated, and things like thermal scanning And, these things that one might say, well, civil liberties are at risk here. And I will say I was one of the pokers in the strategy to be like, are people really going to want their temperatures taken and all that? But I would say within kind of 30 days, we had a pretty good plan to institute all these different things. And Whitney can maybe, I've talked too long, maybe walk through some of the protocols that we did, and then how we started to message it to our tenancy.
Yeah, so it's, to Bill's point, our chief operating officer and the executive team, had the foresight to start early or advanced supply management, which was critical. And we felt very, Scott's sort of line through this process was it's never wrong to over communicate. So our communication platform was extremely intense, and it took on various levels of both what we'll call just the general mainstream digital communication through our property notification systems, our app, our, the normal things that would just make it a more broad message. But then candidly, this is where, this is a testament to our leasing and property operations standards, and really as mentioned, the customer care that I learned from Bill so early on in my career in real estate that's so important. The direct conversation with not just tenants in the vein of who is the real estate contact. It was actually getting through to heads of HR, chief operating officers, chief administrative officers, to really continue to handhold them and keep a very open, mutual, transparent rapport through the first initial weeks of this, when it was still so confusing and so intimidating to the world, right, as to what was happening. It's still so mysterious. And Bill's team really did a great job with that. And moreover, in the spirit of building preparation, we had a very well-oiled machine. There were 2 meetings per week on updating everybody with where we stood with delivery, where we stood with preparation of the lobbies, where we stood with our social distance markers, and all of the stuff that physically tied to the preparation of the space, which one could argue is not really a customer service tactic. It's a public health crisis. That really is a security measure. So our buildings were amped up with both physical presence of security to ensure adherence, as well as digital systems that are part of this Microsoft product that we can talk about in a later question. And then all of the communicative needs, whether that's like a physical signage piece, a digital stanchion, and then the email cadence and the direct ping notices on the app, all of the other communication tools that are required to set the tone that we did it right. We also did a video series that featured Scott more as a thought leader that came out every 4 days during the initial phases of COVID, just really as a psychological safety measure to know that there's a calm person at the helm of our portfolio. That mailing list is about 26,000 people. It includes investors, financial stakeholders, leads within our tenant base and our portfolio, our real estate tenant contacts. It includes several members of the brokerage community. It's a very comprehensive, we'll call it real estate, institutional real estate community list. That was also critical because it set the tone for the steps we were taking, and it also set the tone for we're all in this together, and we have to continue that spirit of mutual accountability and mutual calm through a very daunting, uncertain time in our nation's life. So that sort of combination of things then led to a more didactic video that really showcased what we did at each property. We then set up a microsite that was accessible to all of the tenants that had specific information relevant to each property, which were changes within the tenant handbook and building policies. Like I said, didactic tools that explained the conditions of the building and what we were doing in the extra steps in both security and service enhancement, to explanations and webinars explaining the enhancements to the app and what was required in that from a sense of transparency, data measurement and monitoring. And then lastly, just, any other miscellaneous item, whether it was replanning services or working with us at institutional buying power rates to help get offices supplied and reopened and other things. It encases all of that. And that's been one of our most successful tools. And we've heard both from our brokers as well as our tenants how helpful that has been in what we'll call existing tenancy, as well as candidly attracting new tenancy, which Bill could also go into. We actually had leasing success around 400,000 square feet. I think this was right after second quarter of transactions, many of which were new, which I think is also a testament to the confidence we gave to new customers in our best-in-class services.
Just to give some perspective here, You know, what Whitney described as the tenant handbook and, you know, the markers throughout the lobbies and, you know, a lot of stuff, right? Because we're so brand conscious, these things had to look great, right? When we walk around, we're very critical of, you know, what graphics look like in, you know, various settings. And it's a ton of work to actually come up with these, you know, handbooks and come up with the decals and what they look like and how they should read. And so Whitney and her team, you know, basically did all of those things and made them look terrific, because it's important in a tough time that you want to make those look terrific. And, you know, I think my takeaway from this is, our interaction with our tenants has always been really robust and active, and part of the whole, you know, we view ourselves a little differently, I guess, as a landlord, because we try to be less transactional and more relationship oriented. I think what we got out of this was some of the tenant relationships we had, primarily UBS, who's obviously an international financial firm. They came to us and said, hey, we're happy to partner with you guys to come up with some protocols here as Asia was starting to shut down. So, you know, again, I think because we knew it was coming our way, but because of our relationships with a, you know, really big international tenant, it kind of helped us develop and anticipate some things that were that they were struggling with in some of their Asian locations that, you know, we started to formulate strategy around. So it's kind of a critical piece when you look back, you know, in the final analysis, we'll kind of do a look back and, you know, and we're keeping tabs now on things that, you know, we want to change going forward as far as what approach we should take for certain lease clauses or certain things in, you know, property management directives. So, but that tenant interaction, I can tell you, is quite helpful to us and to them, frankly, as we navigated this.
Yeah, providing the certainty and clarity to folks of what the experience is going to be like when you return feels like a really important thing. It's I think people generally agree on what best practice looks like, but everyone's so focused on just like keeping their core business healthy during this time and keeping their folks engaged. And we do continue to get asked. I mean, that's where people are looking for our help as well. It's just like, what would it mean for my folks to go back? So I guess the next question for you is, can you walk us through a day in the life of just like an employee shows up either at your headquarters or at any one of your buildings? You know, what's the experience like down from the lobby as you engage with, you know, kind of your experience officers, building systems, elevators, any updates there? And also just like policies and procedures around what you expect people to do from a PPE standpoint and, you know, and general best practices from a health and safety standpoint.
So I'll give you my perspective, and then Whitney can drill in a little deeper. But I start the day. I do a temperature screen at home, and again, we're really focused on this. We want to, you know, we're talking the talk, and we have to behave. So we're being watched, and you know, we want to do the right thing all the time. So I take my temperature every day. And then we have on our app, which we can get into in a little bit. We have an app that we've developed, not an off the shelf. We developed it ourselves. And you go through the 4 or 5 questions. You know, do you have a temperature? Been exposed to anybody with COVID? You traveled outside, you know, the region to any of the restricted states? And I fill that out, and then it comes up with a building pass for the day. I show it. I get to the building insanely early for whatever reason, but I guess because I love it, and show it to the guard. And as I'm walking through the lobby, it's taking a thermal scan of me. And if it's 100.3 or higher, I will be directed into a private area. Don't need privacy because at that hour, nobody else is in the lobby except the guards. But you go into a private area. This is where RXO gets into the practice here, which Whitney can describe a little bit better and more about in a minute. And since I haven't had the temperature or any, you know, kind of thermal issues, go to the elevators, go up to the office. And the way we have our office set up, it's, you know, we're one of the few groups that actually have perimeter offices. So with kind of workstations off the core. And we have a path of travel, which we ask people to observe, which is, you know, kind of a clockwise pattern. So I do the correct walk around. do the hand wash, do the whole thing, and sit down and start the day. And we can get into this in a second, but I'm constantly watching at the people counter that we have as well, which watches all the pedestrian traffic, well, the tenant traffic coming into the building, to kind of see where the day's occupancy is and when it starts and when, kind of where we hit the peak. So that's kind of my path to travel up till about, 7 o'clock, 7 a.m. or so, and then we'll go from there. So Whitney?
I'm muted. I think, again, Scott and the executive team they were so good about how we met and the open communication and the frequency of such that, and the importance of accelerating us coming back, because I think the reality is, Scott keeps saying we're going to have to coexist with this. He's been pretty outspoken with the media on the reality check of it. Even if a vax literally got approved today, that does not mean it's in the hands socially of 5 billion people around the world tomorrow. It's going to take time. So I think to Bill's point, all of us sort of got in the habit very quickly of a new routine. So, and the fact that we've been doing it for such a long time means it really is second nature for us. And I think that's critically important. So now, what might have seemed odd in the first steps of the day of going through that questionnaire each morning to actually, I'll show you a picture to get a picture of your daily pass and walking past the temperature scanners and all that, that's very habitual now. And it doesn't seem as odd or weird or challenging because we've been doing it with such a rhythm of second nature for so long. So that's all I want to say, just sort of to the aspects of what Bill mentioned earlier. So my routine's not dissimilar to his. I will admit this, for some of us who live in the city, and I like to refer to my apartment as my 700 square foot mansion, I also had to do some self-assessment when I remember my sister's like, well, just get a thermometer, get your thermometer and check your temperature if you're feeling worried. I actually had to buy a thermometer. I mean, there's certain things of I didn't have a coffee machine. When I thought Starbucks, so selfishly speaking, was going to be considered an essential business, because I'm like, do you know how many people don't have coffee machines in their New York apartment? That's a fact, right? So my point is, there was just certain things you just had to grow up and kind of get more accustomed to. So for me, I go through the same sort of similar routine as Bill's, get yourself kind of prepped, do your part, be responsible so that we can speak with authenticity and honesty to say that when we come in, we really met certain measures when we fill out that questionnaire. And then once we're in the space, I'm a little quirky and wonky to begin with. I have I think some of my team members are on this, so they'll probably laugh at this. I have a whole weird thing of wiping down the door handles, wiping down the phone. I was good about that to begin with pre-COVID. I think it just exacerbated some of that compulsion during it. And not because I'm scared of getting it. I don't want to be the person who quietly might have it and not know it, and then be the one who's spreading it, right? So this sense, I think, RXR's sense of holding people mutually accountable, I think is going to be a really important step in order to get more people back with more confidence, knowing that we are going to have to coexist with this for quite some time. As for the experiences on site, we, pre-COVID, had already launched something called the RXO, which stands for the RXR Experience Officer. And that's just a very elevated, more comprehensive concierge program, beyond just what we'll say fielding questions and being an extension of customer service at the property office, management office level. In residential, we call those community managers. The RXO is not just an extension of that, it's also now tying in all of the empirical data review that we're getting from these data tools and technology tools that we have, and helping to bring a heightened attention at the executive team level or the steering committee level as to behavioral changes happening in the building that may inform other things that we do. So their role is actually not only tied, this is an important focus right now because it's a public health crisis that the whole world is tuned into, but their roles are actually going to speak to other things that tie to environmental sustainability, social impact and ESG opportunity, DEI, there's a lot of levels within their curriculum, is what we call it, that they plan for our occupants that ties to just a holistically better and more physically and socially well environment. And we're very excited to see that kick off more robustly in 2021. We completed the hiring on the commercial side effective July. That started January, but the final few were brought in July. And they already have put together some really terrific initiatives, both virtual and where relevant in certain assets on site, that have been quite well received by our tenants.
That's great. And I mean, the fact that I think you mentioned it, that we're going to have to live with this for this reality for a while, means that this is just about behavior change, and it's about giving people, just line of sight of just like what, the new routine is going to look like and everything like that. As you talk to your expanded customer list, especially not just the folks in the corporate real estate departments, but HR, operating officers, other key stakeholders, what's the thing that's still holding people back? Because despite all of your leadership efforts, and even as a firm, your ability to get your own team back to the office, I think in New York, we're still between 10 and 20% at the city level. And I think Knotel's experience, it sounds like RXR's experience is kind of indexed to that as far as the number of tenant members that are coming back to the office right now. So what's your perspective of what are people's key concerns and what might still be holding them back?
So I think it falls into multiple buckets. I think that there's certainly certain leadership in, all across the country that don't feel need or a cause to bring their people back for a whole variety of reasons, right? And I think, by the way, I think that's a terrible idea. I don't think that, the work from home, I think you can play pretty good defense. I think it's tough to play offense when you've got your whole team at home. I think you can kind of get through, as we did well, difficult period of time. But when you're really trying to grow a business and you're trying to mentor people, you're trying to onboard new hires, it's impossible. And so, but I do think that that's holding some of it back. And then, I think that there is some worry by, kind of the working population for public transportation. I think that that's a big component. People may be nervous about riding on Metro North or Long Island Railroad or the subways and buses. We found through our research at McKinsey, and this research is out there, and I think employers need to do a better job communicating with their workforce. The surface transmission is very, very low probability, and wearing the mask and certain protocols, washing your hands, keeps you safe. And so the science is there. The data is there, and you can look at Asia and certain parts of Europe where they reopened, and the transmission rate was not caused by riding the subway or the bus. You got to be smart about it, but and we really need to do a better job of educating people. Scott just this week took a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, met downtown, took the subway to our office, and it's the first time that this individual had been on public transportation in 7 months. And the end result of that was this reporter said, it actually felt pretty good to be back in my routine. And really that's what it is. It's kind of getting back to your routine and feeling comfortable. And then once you're in the space, having the right protocols as we've done in our offices to make people feel safe. And what that means is, we've done all the kind of protective barriers between workstations, kind of the glass screening partitions. We ask people when they're in open areas that, or conference rooms where they're close together, that they wear a mask. We do have environments where, they're in kind of communal areas, not many people in the same spot, but as long as you're greater than 6 feet apart, and there's a limited number of people, you can remove the mask. So, we do have pretty strict protocols, but the one item that we do have is a contact tracing device that we clip on in the morning, and we wear it all day long. We still are restricting outside visitors into our offices right now. That'll return at some point in the near future here, but if a visitor comes in, they'll be wearing one of those contact tracing devices, and it does two things. Number one, it keeps you in compliance with, hey, have you been within 6 feet of another person? If you get within the 6 feet, it buzzes and sends a little red light, and just doesn't shock you or anything, but it lets you know that you're not in compliance. It aggregates the data on an anonymous basis, and so you can download it into your phone. You can see if how much you've been compliant throughout the week, the day, the last few hours. But I think the great feature of that is if there is an infection, our HR department can flip on the de-anonymous version, and it can say, hey, Elder, you were within 6 feet of, Mr. Smith, and you should go get a test right now, right? So I think testing, kind of contact tracing devices, in the office, plus all the PPE, and then the kind of the right barriers, the right protocols, the right cleaning, direct communication often with team members. It's about making people safe. And so I can tell you, we've been back in the office since June 22nd. We started at about 20%, and it didn't feel good. It didn't feel right. It almost was like, I'd rather almost work from home, because the amount of people who are here, the engagement is just not, all that inspiring. And so we all agreed on the executive level, like, we need to bring more people back. And we did it pretty quickly, and we did it in compliance with all the laws and all the things that we're doing to keep people safe. And you said before, Trevor, we're about 90%. Now there are some team members that have some, health issues, or, somebody who lives with them that does, or child care issue, whatever. And we're fine with that, right? But I can tell you personally, 90%, my entire team's in. The interaction it's awesome. It's just, you got to it's not that much different than it was. You got to wear a mask, but just, these inspirational moments, you run into people. Oh, I forgot to mention, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't happen over the Zoom. It doesn't. So, I think everybody's responsibility is to figure out a way to get their people back in the office. And it's a better experience for them. It's more productive. But you got to take the steps to keep people safe. So, so that's what I got to say about that, Whitney.
No, I agree, Bill. I agree. I think, it's also sometimes taking a step back and recognizing behaviors. What people, yes, you have a lot of people that live outside of the city and likely are in more spacious homes or what have you, but let's think of the people who had to stay put in the city, for which there were many that represent a broad spectrum of lower to upper middle income, right, in this market. The reality is, so you took everybody out of an office, but you reconcentrated that concentration in a dense residential setting. And these people still had to go to a drugstore and a grocery store every day. So even though everything else was shut, I recall being in, first of all, when a line to get into a Whole Foods or a D'Agostino is reminiscent of Studio 54, that's a whole other weird surreal problem. But so you're standing in line. Yes, they're holding you to, some grocery stores, Whole Foods is actually good about this. They're holding you to a count in the store, but a lot aren't. And it's in the suburbs as well. It was like a free-for-all on Saturday. If that was the day that new supplies were coming in, or the toilet paper aisle got filled, all the weird things that happened at the start of this. So the reality is, people actually have been in indoor environments confronting masses or clusters or odd passings of each other in a weird way. But if you're wearing your mask, and I think what the shutdown proved is those environments had people wearing their mask and being respectful at a point where you're actually standing still in some sort of proximity to someone. And it proved that the spread rate went down. So I think we have to start getting a little bit more emphatic, candidly, with business leaders to say, and that's a collective we, to almost intimidate them into a like, you can do this, people. Like, you can get back and people can actually coexist with this. I think it's still been a soft, and I'm not saying this is not we as an industry, we as an RXR, it's a collective we. There's still been a soft encouragement. I think it's time for us to get a bit more candidly imperious and emphatic about it. People just need to get back. And I think what's interesting is when you think of certain business leaders, a majority of business leaders in this particular region, many of whom fled the city, their lives are actually the least disrupted by the new abnormal. They already have access to private drivers. They live in higher, we'll call it the highest quality buildings in the immediate core area. And a lot of them have, special entry protocols within their ecosystems. Is there a dedicated or private elevator? I mean, when you start to think of, those are the private bathrooms, not even using the communal bathrooms. So when you start to think of some of the ecosystem of the highest representation of employment in this region, those leadership teams are the most conducive to the new abnormal, because their daily lives were already somewhat private and isolated. So to set the tone that you're actually coming back and sitting in your office, it creates a lot more confidence for the broader teams in those ecosystems to feel like leadership setting an example, and we could feel confident too.
Got it. We've got about 10 minutes left. So I wanted to hit on a couple things real quick, and we can tackle them whatever order you'd prefer. But one, I'd like to talk a little bit about the role of technology. As you've mentioned, kind of hinted at this RXWell app and your partnership with Microsoft and kind of the role in technology to help, people navigate the office, have collisions, but have those collisions happen, at a safe distance. And then kind of the reaction, there was a journal article that Scott, your CEO, was prominently featured in around, welcome back to the office, every move will be watched, and just kind of, how your own team has reacted to that, and maybe even counterintuitively how people have responded positively, given that it helps them navigate this new world. So that's one, let's talk technology. But then the second is maybe like to also get your perspective from an advocate, being a vocal advocate of, politically talking to the city about how to get people back to work. Maybe, kind of RXR's position on what needs to change, maybe within, at the New York City, at the city level to encourage the, folks in the city to really get back to work full.
So I'll give you kind of a general response to a lot of that. So, we've been trying to figure out for a long time, the appropriate application of technology in real estate. I'd say it's probably the last adapter out there, and probably for good reason. But when I look at the systems and protocols that we've set up for COVID, I'm hopeful, and I'm certain of it. This is not going to be with us forever, right? I suppose there could be another issue that we'll have to deal with, and we'll have the technology for that. But what I'm really interested in getting people to adapt to using our app. But when COVID's done and over, what's the residual value of that? Which is, we're spending a lot of time on that. So workplace optimization, environmental, inside and outside the building. What's your air quality? Even people count, right? It's like, hey, maybe I don't want to deal with an elevator right now for whatever reason, because there's a lot of people. So just kind of giving people enough information, they can just make whatever choice makes sense for them, right? It's kind of that easy use of the real estate that they're in to make their lives a more quality kind of experience. And so I think that spills over into so many broad categories, and just visitor registration is going to become a lot easier through this. Programming and tenant wants and needs. Now that we'll have all of our tenants, individual tenants, on this app to make their life easier, and working with them to figure out, we don't want to annoy them or push content that they don't care about, but just what do you want to see from us, right? So I think just that experience is a huge part of kind of creating a winning situation out of all of this. But the one thing I keep coming back to is for me and for us, we worry about our business just as far as we want to be thought of as the first landlord that somebody wants to come and lease space from and expand with and do all of those things. And again, you go through one of these negative periods of time, and you come out of it on the other side, and you're either damaged, you're the same, or you're better. And fortunately for us, I think we come out of this much better than we went into it. And again, I spend a huge amount of time during the week just checking in with our biggest tenants for sure, international, and kind of seeing, hey, what's going on in your business, what's going on in your world, how are you thinking about things? Because we want to keep our finger on the pulse of satellite distributed workforces, all these things that we're hearing about, but it hasn't happened yet. But what's reassuring to me in those conversations is, since we put out all the things that we're doing in a digestible format, thanks to Whitney and her team, it's something that looks good, you can understand it, it's not the biggest novel you ever read, it's informative. Our tenants have really, and tenants never tell us we're doing a great job, right? Because it's just this, this transactional relationship is like, if I say they're doing a good job, they're going to kill me on the rent next time or whatever, right? But this time around, I've heard something far different. It's almost like we went through a war, and now everybody's emotions are kind of lining up that we took care of each other. We gave them certain tools. They reacted. They were helpful for us developing the tools. And now I hear things from giant international companies saying, hey, this has caused us to reevaluate our relationship with our vendors, our landlords, all these different things. That from that level down to the smallest tenant. And then, the one-off kind of, hey, you guys did a great job, and, Scott's such a leader, and, we're so proud to be with you. And then the even better ones that are like people we talk to that say, we wish we were in an RXR building. So reassuring comments. And I say this with respect and humbleness, because, we got a lot to maintain and, a lot to get done. But it does make it feel better having done, all this work with incredible people, that we're on the right path and we had the right idea. But again, I think the technology element of it, you talk about the devastation of retail, for instance, right? So accelerated by COVID. It was probably going to happen anyway to a large extent, but it just got accelerated through this. Same thing with technology. So that was a bad, right? So the good is going to be the technology acceleration that comes out of this. I think we're one of the groups leading the charge here. So hope that answered the question.
I would just add to it, listen, it's a sensitive topic and you can't ignore the human factor, right? You have to think of, we're very blessed because our particular company is still boutique compared to a massive law firm or investment bank or huge tech giant. And we already had a very good communication rapport in advance of this process. I mean, to give a sense of understanding, some employees were scared. Not everybody has the same working parents. Not everyone has the same luxuries of having outside support, or the schools. It's also really critical. Not all the school districts are aligned on when kids were starting, what the rotational period is. So, we were very, very good about having routine surveys to the whole company that tackled a lot of the issues. And the fact that we also have geographical differences. We have a Long Island administrative office and we have a New York City's executive office. So understanding what the challenges that needed to be met for a confluence of things that speak to the human factor was also very critical. And I think what happened was on the last, one of the last surveys we did in the summer, that also set the tone that psychologically the company was feeling ready to come back. And that essentially is what gave the official go on, everyone's back. And as Bill mentioned, except for the few that had some other, critical needs that needed to be dealt with, everyone was back in a full-time capacity. And that we're blessed to be able to do that. Not every company is of a scale or size, or they're so big that it's harder to have all of that one-on-one direct correspondence, and it's administratively sometimes taxing and difficult to issue a big digital survey every month. So some of it's also just based candidly on the company size and the company culture as to how you can get the psychological comfort ready as quickly as possible.
Musa, we're coming up on time. I don't know if we've got time for one more question, or if we're running up on a hard stop. You tell me.
I think let's do one bonus question. Fascinating discussion. Let's see if we can squeeze in one more.
Yeah, maybe. So we talked a lot about today and the now. It would be really interesting, though, to get your perspective on 2021 and beyond. And Bill, you kind of hit on it with kind of the impact to retail. But even in the office market, what do you think will be accelerated as a result of this? I mean, we're sitting in the flex office space, so selfishly, we're really interested just on the impact of lease terms generally, and if we're going to continue to see compression there. But I'd also be interested in like the products as a prominent landlord that you're thinking about rolling out, and your position around doing, entering the flex market or offering different services to your large members.
Yeah, look, not to get too hung up on the market. Obviously, there's going to be and has been a correction, so it's not going to last forever. So I don't really want to dwell on that for the moment. But look, I think there's going to be a fundamental shift in what's important as far as amenity offerings. I think that wellness will and is kind of on the forefront of people's minds. It'll replace be much more important than lead ever was. So I think that's important. I think having the wellness from a just a medical services standpoint as well. Right, we saw different groups that were incorporating physician assistant or physicians in their flex space offerings. I think that'll continue. I think that will grow. We're looking, we're doing some partnerships right now that I'm not going to get into the direction because it's still a little early. I think flexibility is going to be important. I think flex office is definitely going to be around. It's just kind of going through whatever fundamental kind of shakeout that all emerging businesses go through. But that's definitely going to be an important path as we go forward, an important offering. And look, I think people have gone through, I guess, some just an emotional roller coaster. I think people have really defined what's important in their lives. And, certainly work is an important function of that. For some, it's just economic reward. And for others, it's, I think maybe, emotional and mental rewarding, just as far as some of the accomplishments they do, or a combination of both. But I think the takeaway is people are going to focus more about the quality of life in their workspace. Yeah. And so we talk about the wellness offering, but I think, as we move forward, there'll be more kind of definition around what the, individuals who work in office buildings are looking for. But one thing for sure, they're going to be looking just for an easier life, right? It's like, I don't want to go through the hassles of having to go through this system and getting the visitor set up. And then they have to come in and get this little card. I think it's going to be just fill this out. You'll get a QR code, go to the turnstile, you'll be let in. And just things like that, just making people's lives easier. So I think there'll be a whole gamut of services, and we're working on them right now. We're working on a pre-built offering in several of our buildings that institute real flexible, like office wall systems and some office utilization technology that we're about to launch next week. And like, I think that'll be probably one of the first sectors to come back in a healthy way into the office market, and we're seeing it now. So I think there's some subtle differences, and there'll be some fundamental shifts too. But that's kind of where I see the world going to.
And I think it's important to note, again, this was a completely unforeseen thing that you can't really compare it to other economic downturns or cycles because of the odd and the sheer surreality and surreality and oddness of it being a virus, right? But if you look at past cycles, there's always an industry or a few industry subsets that become the grower. So, at times where maybe financial services was taking a hit, TAMI emerged. At times where people forget, we're really dating ourselves, but you go back to the Enron crash. That was at the tail end that was post 9/11 and post the dot-com bust. Law firms became massive consumers of real estate. So, and at the time, law firms still had they're still the most generous when you think of occupancy ratios, but they had an even more generous footprint. So that really helped with absorption in core Midtown. So there will still be a group that's growing and expanding in this climate, regardless of COVID. That's the natural order of things. Clearly tech still performed well. There'll be other, areas surrounding healthcare and what have you. I think you'll see potentially large legal continue, right? There's going to be other facets that come out of something like this that trigger more hiring needs, but you will see users that actually grow. And I agree with Bill. I think that the most important trends are going to be driven by corporate culture. Flexibility, I think, is going to be the most important thing. I think, again, for working parents, there's a lot of potential silver linings that come out of this to show if your child is sick one day, you can stay home and work and be there for your child and not have it count against your PTO. I think this is going to change, potentially change for the benefit of parents, both parents, whether it's a same-sex couple or a dual-sex couple. You're going to see, I think, benefits in parental leave when children are born that I think is actually good. America's behind other countries on that alone. So I actually think you're going to see some cultural shifts, which will be hopefully geared towards flexibility. And I think that also makes the quality of life and work-life balance a lot stronger.
Well, thank you so much for the time. This has been great. I keep it going selfishly, but I know you've got stuff to get back to, and really appreciate everyone in the audience tuning in. Musa, if you want to just kind of wrap things up, let people know where to find this, and also what other content might be coming down the pike. But but again, Bill, Whitney, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate
pleasure
the conversation.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, Bill, Whitney, that was phenomenal. Thank you for sharing your insights, and both clearly at the office with a pretty solid view. So thanks for taking some time out. We'll record this. We'll make sure everyone who registered has the link, and we're continuing webinar series next week with the head of workplace experience at Lego, and we'll make sure that those interested get that link as well. But thanks again to RXR, Bill, Whitney, and Trevor for leading today's discussion. Have a great
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Trevor.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.